Hello guys and welcome to another video. This will be me analyzing Dopa's Twisted Fate against LeBlanc. As expected, he's running Ignite, which I usually do. He's going Doran's Ring and double pulse because there's no real need to go boots, as you can't really out-trade her early on in the lane phase if she does go for the early one. Never mind. He opts to take the safe route against LeBlanc and go boots. Another reason for the boots could be he's facing Nidalee with Storm Raiders, so if LeBlanc does manage to chain him and he does manage to get speared, he may suffer heavy loss of HP and die to the gank, or get bullied out. So might have opted different now. They go for the invade and it succeeds, because Nidalee reacts slow and no one really warded it against him. Quite disappointing to see most dealer that an invade would really succeed or matter. They shut down the Nidalee flash, so she's gonna be more reluctant making aggressive plays, especially perhaps around the mid and killing Dopa himself, because Lee can be around the mid lane and wait for LeBlanc to W, and then they can lock her down with... Oh, Dopa flashed as well. Never mind. Take that back. She can actually come mid. This changes the dynamic. Oh, they're actually playing aggressive. Wow. I don't really have much to offer for the early game. The enemy team wanted to desperately get an aggression. Lee got an insanely good start because it's 2-0. Dopa got 100 gold, so it doesn't really matter he missed the minions of the free, because it gets negated after 100 he already has. Plus he reached in time to get the experience. Here he's trying to shove out, so he gets a larger minion pool against the LeBlanc to trade if she goes in to proc the Thunderlord. Plus he knows the Nidalee won't be around for a long time since she died, and she'll be really slow until she even reach level 3. So he can go for an aggressive play against the LeBlanc to shove out. He's playing around the ranged minions, which is standard against LeBlanc, because you want to remain around the vicinity of the ranged minions in case she comes forth and chain you, then you can dance around them. If she does in a future example, I'll highlight it if there are any confusions to what I'm saying. Lee Sin is snowballing his lead and found his third kill of the game. To your Nidalee. Come on, like, it's so painful to watch this Nida. I have no idea what she's doing. She's just being the victim of the game. Really hard so far. Like, Nidalee being behind also dictates the playstyle of the mid. Dopa manages to shove in the lane, so now it's resetting and shoving towards him, which LeBlanc really didn't try hard to reset, and Dopa is now slow pushing it. Wow, that actually chain was a bit weird. I don't think it should have connected, but might have been 1 millimeter off. LeBlanc manages to pressure Dopa and crash the wave in, which denied him a few minions. So that's well played on her part. She needs to get something going. Dopa wants to go in for the auto attacks to bait her W, but she doesn't take in the bait, which indicates it's warded. Either from each, it doesn't matter what side, since Fresh is setting up on the side. So it's really hard to say from which side she warded. Now the LeBlanc goes in. He blue cards her just to put some damage and get some mana. He should recall and get Catalyst at this point of the game. He is really and the Lee and Fresh are putting too much pressure for him to manipulate any factor, and it becomes really risky to stay an extended amount of time against LeBlanc at this point, as the LeBlanc is playing Corrupting and has sums up with Ignite. The cancellation by LeBlanc was really good, so she can crush in the wave and possibly make Dopa miss experience and gold off the current mini wave. She's accumulating a lead because of the 3 initial minions that Dopa missed, so if anything he should have been a 30, and the minion wave she managed to crash while Dopa was going for the dead Nidalee at blue buff and this wave, so she's accumulated a lead through 3 different mini events. However, the gold outcome isn't really realistically as large, or needs to be considered because he has the 2 assist and the passive ramping up gold to make up for the difference. The only difference that will really hurt for him is the experience. Plus, since LeBlanc recalled, it's shoving now towards her, as she manages to shove out the wave before she recalled. She's going for the all-in play. She nearly gets it on max range chain to put Dopa perhaps low enough for the kill execute on Ignite. She did a really good chain that forced him out, and they returned cleverly with her W's. Lee Sin gets 1v1 wrecked, despite his lead. I do not really know how that happened, but Lee must have owed first aid and not have had full HP or something. Because Nidalee doesn't even have true smite, or any realistic pressure with the build, or level experience advantage, since she should be behind. This will reset the pressure for the jungle. Dopa tries to bait her in or take the chain, but he ends up just insta-locking the first yellow card and negating her chain. And Dopa's alive. I'm surprised LeBlanc went for double Q, which is really questionable, because I think if she went for chain, she would have gotten one more auto. Because she went with WQ and then ulting in another Q, I believe. So her ult was back up and she didn't chain him, even though he zoned himself towards the turret, which was really weird. And the Nidalee is dead again. This will help Dopa a bit with the pressure, because her all-in won't be as strong with the Ignite. Without the Ignite, I mean. He plays around the minions as expected. We can just look back a bit on it. So here instantly as she comes in, he knows that she's gonna W here, and he's standing here, so the only way he's gonna go is inwards towards the minion, so he can juke out the chain, which he exactly does. So he's playing around his minions, and if she were to aggro though, those minions would come and auto attack her, which is really well played. And that's expected, because you see that he's instantly moving towards the minions and he's playing around them. However, the LeBlanc still wins out because she just fully combos really quickly and she leaves. Plus it kills off most of the minions as well. And she only loses out on one minion, and it doesn't allow Dopa to crush it or even win the trade. She manages also to proc the revolver, so she can wait and make Dopa burn all of his refillable potion charges, and she's just gonna wait for the next revolver for a stronger all-in. He manages to sidestep her chain, and that will be the end of that trade because she doesn't have her ult up as of yet. He's, he's baiting towards Lee Sin if she were to W. She burns her ult to escape the stun and Lee Sin combo. So that means she doesn't have ult charge again for, I think it's 40 seconds approximately. I think they could have set up perhaps to kill the Nidalee, but that's up to how Lee would react to his ping and teleporting on the Nida, because everyone else was really far away. And Nidalee has really played the best or reacted the best so far this game, so it could have been an option. So far the lane phase has been pretty slow. Dopa hasn't managed to find anything and he's just been poked by the LeBlanc. There hasn't really been many lane manipulations or high plays because the sheriff LeBlanc has managed to hit have been of fewer waves, where Dopa has zoned himself a bit away from them because of how the wave was manipulated. Here his team play just overreach and he can't do anything about it because he's and he doesn't really have any damage item as of yet, so he's really weak. So that's just a mistake by his team. The wave is gonna crash again, so he needs to reset it before he even tries to recall, and he might consider staying, even though he doesn't have any potions, on the assumption that LeBlanc will with recall, which I would have assumed as well, because LeBlanc was showing either a tendency to fake or instantly go for the recall. As of yet, like I was saying before, the lane has been pretty much back and forth on manipulating where to crash it in and then try to freeze it. However, it's been heavily disrupted both by the junglers and then the fresh roaming mid, so there hasn't been many manipulations or ganks that Dopa could have set up to bait or fake for the LeBlanc. LeBlanc has persistently gone to try and proc Revolver and chain him, but he's been managing to dodge most of them, even if he wasn't playing around the minions most of the times. There was only one realistic, really strong all-in from the LeBlanc that could have killed Dopa, but he survived on 8 HP. So it's a pretty slow game to look at. Plus Dopa hasn't really been able to find any ult. LeBlanc has kept him in lane relatively good, and all opportunities that his team has been fighting has been short-lived. He steps to the side, which LeBlanc should have waited with chain to see what tendency he goes for, and then chain Dopa. However, he just immediately steps and assumes that she will toss the chain right away, and it ends the play. It's correctly played by Dopa, because he needs to sidestep to try and bait the chain if it's an instantaneous chain. But the LeBlanc played really poorly. She could have waited and zoned him more by holding onto the chain. Here he reacts to the how deep Nidalee was and manages to stun her. Nidalee reacts really slow again, which is like a huge part of the story of Nidalee misplaying a lot and being in places she shouldn't be. And it ends up being a 1-for-1 extension where they trade one team member for the eventual Kled because Nidalee flashes away. Dopa tries to red card the turret to proc the LeBlanc, then he fails his Q quite by a bit. He should have played it a bit more He should have queued the. Hang on. Okay, let's look at it. He baits with red. He procs the red card in case it's enough to hit, but it isn't. And now he proceeds to do a Q next, which we can just. Okay, so by the looks of the Q will go here, relatively. So LeBlanc can stay at this point because it's not enough for the Q to zone nor hit before Trundle comes and auto-attacks her. But if he was playing the Q a bit further, it would have hit because she's able to walk this Q. She doesn't even need to stay. But so if the Q was more upwards trajectory, she would not be able to walk it. And Trundle could have used the Q that's zoning her to walk away from the Q he failed. And then Trundle would have auto attacked her straight from above because this Q would have zoned, but the Q he set out to do is just gonna get walked by the LeBlanc, which you see that it's just not gonna hit her, while the other Q would have hit her, and she would have been where the card is, and Trundle would have been in range for the auto attack from where he's positioned. LeBlanc even had time to press a spell and walk this Q, which indicates how bad the initial Q or the miscalculation on Dopa's part was tossing the Q. So like I said, this one was incorrect, as you see, because Trundle would have been able to auto her if he would have queued yeah, towards this trajectory where she stands, because it would have landed on her, or it would have zoned her towards where the previous Q is, and Trundle would have auto-attacked. So this was a poor miscalculated Q that was impulsive on the assumption that he thought the red card would deal her, and then he just swiftly hit Q, and then he realized I should have queued here, which I think was off his reaction that he realized it instantly himself. He finally managed to get Rod of Ages and stack it up. He also gets early MR and Mercs, which is really good. Now he can negate a lot of damage both from the LeBlanc and Nidalee coming in, and he can negate the duration from the Hex Tech coming in to slow him, and the possible shade that hits him on how long he's gonna be CC'd for. The LeBlanc is zoning and using the red buff and the all-in differential that she's stronger one-on-one. And Dopa doesn't have enough of a wave to trade accurately with her if they were to trade blows for a extended 1v1. And there's no reason for him to take the 1v1 because of the red buff. That he's doing fairly well. He accidentally hits the clone and soaks the entire LeBlanc damage. LeBlanc had to use her ult though, so she didn't get that much damage off onto him, because she did not have her ult up. She used it to gain the distance with her W. Dopa manipulates the Q and the wave so he can hit 4 of them and let one of them get denied, which is usual for a TF, because the one minion don't really amount to much, and you get pretty much the same goal from taking the 4-1 and proccing your passive on those 4 as you would from 5 minions. Plus the 5th one could make you overstay and die potentially. So it's reason on how you take the wave and approach it, because you're not always allowed to take all 5 minions. LeBlanc goes in and it ends up being a poorly half trade for her. He cancels the Kled recall because Kled is relatively low and his team is doing Rift. So it could amount to something. The ult wasn't really that good, in my opinion. But it's enough because Gangplank tries to barrel his teammates and it ends up going down. I think they might also have pinged that the GP doesn't have flash. And by the looks of it, the GP doesn't instantly pay attention that the TF was porting onto him, because his camera must have been on the first barrel that he hit on his teammates to slow them. That's why, even though he TP'd on top of him, um, it led to him being exactly on top of him, because GP didn't instantly react to go to the side, so he would have been right to the GP and the GP would have been more left. So perhaps GP could have taken a different route to escape if he reacted instead to Dopa, with barrel Dopa instead of Dopa's teammate. Dopa doesn't overstay the LeBlanc because there's no use to it. They already got the GP, they got some damage off, they managed to shove in the top lane really deep for potentially set it up for someone else to pick up eventually. And they took off Dragon off the GP kill because they have more numbers, and they pulled the LeBlanc upwards, so they still have more numbers. They cleared ults because he knows Dopa went back and they saw an opportunity to perhaps come back into the game. The red card was good there, both to hit the minions and slow the LeBlanc, but the LeBlanc's all-in is not strong enough. LeBlanc went pro to belt, no GLP, sorry, which I have no idea why. I guess it's to kite backwards for her team, but I don't know, it's hard to say. I'd assume because Dopa's team plays pretty much forward, the LeBlanc wants to find a spread all in, or wants to set up with the Kled Nidalee better, or just kiting more. As for the wave clear, even though her wave clear got nerfed by 20% with the W and Q combo, I believe she has enough to clear the wave anyway, so I don't understand the other usages of it. They set up the way pretty standard, and Dopa is being more reactive to his team, where the solo lane is eating CS or where the ADC is eating CS. So he's just going to the remainder of the lane for wherever the other one is eating. LeBlanc wards and actually just paths up to it instead of W warding over the wall, which is really bad in case of them being there, because she went in range for TF to stun her and for Fresh obviously to hook her instead of trying to W, so Fresh needs to hook her and then TF needs to stun her. And if she does something, she can return to the first W and then just be CC'd one time into a second one. Dopa is sitting on the far side after he's done his initial cooldowns, and just looks at the team fight on however it's being played out from his team. so he's not being in any danger playing TF. And then he waits for his next combo to come up, and they were in range of Nidalee, who still zoned towards her team, and a bit away because the team fight was getting lost, so Dopa was allowed to move up and just do a secondary rotation to kill the Nidalee off, with his team coming in, crashing downwards from wolves. Dopa always seems to favor to stay away from the team fights, not really auto-attacking much until it's a clear win. So he instantly combos and then tends to move to the side and play a lot on the side of his teammates, which is I guess it's a pretty safe and standard TF style, which I don't really mind because as long as he stays alive, he can go and farm some other wave or set up even if they were to lose, and it wouldn't necessarily endanger himself from dying to anyone. However, on the off chance that they lack damage or they're gonna win regardless, there are different factors where he can use his health to bait them out or use stuff on him because he's still relatively healthy and they don't have an easy time to even all in and kill him. But this is just the observation I've had of this game and the previous and first game I analyzed of him that I put on YouTube. Here he zoned really poorly and he took like the full damage off them, he took the full GP ult, he zoned upwards, he took the LeBlanc, Kled and the full MF ult. This was really bad played from his team. It was a greedy call and they didn't manage to kill the Baron off too quick, so it's a throw. The goal they got from it is pretty much in favor because the enemy team don't have any wave to work up to take any objectives because there are no objectives on the map. Wait, did enemy team steal Baron? No, Fresh has it, it's just poor quality. They traded 4 for 2 and they managed to keep a member with the Baron buff. So the gold went still up for Dopa's team. However, it can bring the enemy team a bit back into game depending on how the next team fight is, as the newfound gold could resurge into another item or potential catch for the enemy team to have and close a kill out on. Ooh. Dopa's team got an Inferno when they're already winning. Pretty much. Uh, it sucks for the enemy team. The enemy team are desperately trying to fight afterwards because one of them ended up being caught. They manages to do just that. Dopa should have baited a bit more with his W before the LeBlanc came in. And the LeBlanc was showing a tendency to be baited in because she wanted more. But it ends up in another confusing team fight where both team didn't really get much and can't really do much on the back end of it. However, the enemy team is allowed to push for the T2 because they know Lee and TF don't have the Baron buff and they will have a hard time staying or dealing with the LeBlanc and GP if they were to overstay. Oh, that's actually the first usage of the GLP that LeBlanc did good, but then she killed herself for, I don't know, some unquestionable and doubtful reason. The Kled instantly wants to do an ambitious play and capitalize on the lost team fight. He manages to kill Lee barely before Kled manages to survive. Trundle drains him with the ult and the ground. Actually, I don't know that much about Trundle and the drainage, sorry. If I'm misspeaking about it. Dopa is a bit reluctant selling the the magic resist as it helps buffer against the LeBlanc. He didn't really buy it because he wanted another item. He just bought it for the additional magic resist to be had against the LeBlanc and the Nidalee. And he's being reluctant selling about it to get more items, as he can clear the wave and wait for the recalls of Lee, as it doesn't really amount much to anything, nor are the lanes really set up for him to accomplish anything objective wise. So he can now find recall, another time to recall after shoving the mid wave and getting enough gold. He's opting in to go full damage as he hasn't really been much under threat to use the Zonia or found himself to use Zonia, and ulting into the enemy team comp can end up being really bad as the GP awaits there to greet him with a barrel after the Zonia. So he's opting to play around the outskirts of his team again on every team fight and just use the damage surge to close out close out kills and then move forward from there. That's the playstyle he set out in this game, and that he's pretty much displaying every time he's on TF. That he's calm and collectedly playing it on the side of his teammates and not going too far in. He didn't want to ult and waste the ult in case of someone else was nearby, because he knew they would have ended up getting the Nidalee and he might have died then afterwards himself, because the LeBlanc would have gotten the Lee kill and then she would turn back to him, and on the off chance someone else being there, like I said, and they would then pick up him, having waiting for the Nidalee Zonia to expire. Kalista ended up being caught. Dopa is being ulted on. He predicts where Kled ulted, it was just down the middle, like a bowling. Yeah, pretty much like a bowling ball in the alley, wanting to go for a fucking strike. The Fresh tends to step outside the turret for some peculiar reason. They put a bit too much damage on the Kled. Oh, never mind, I forgot it cancels the stun. They trade the jugglers and top laners, it appears. He stuns the GP, he doesn't try to predict where he cleanses and runs off to hit the next Q. He's chasing the LeBlanc to see where she W, but I'm pretty sure he just wants to force the W so he can ult after her, which is exactly what he does. He locks the blue card for strange reason. LeBlanc goes back to try and kill the Kalista so they can trade the mid lane for the ADC so Kalista isn't alive to do anything, which is, I think, Baron coming up, with the Trundle having died first and respawning, with the enemy Kled. So LeBlanc wanted to deny them the possibility of them doing Baron, so on the off chance he wanted to trade her life for Kalista, which is a good play, but it didn't happen, so it just ends up being negated, and they end up not really doing or using much. So the enemy team gets Baron anyway. This was a high level decision play by LeBlanc because she saw the risk of her dying and amounting to nothing, just giving them gold, but she knew that the enemy team was gonna look for Baron with the respawn on the off chance of Kalista being alive, so she just wanted to go and trade the Kalista for her own life. The enemy team is not sitting on much MR, so he opts in to go for the Banshee's Veil. Actually, the team has no MR if I saw everything correctly. So he doesn't need Void Staff as of yet. So he opts into a safe route, and he should be incredibly hard to kill at this point. And he has Flash up. So he can look also to capitalize and flash in and do a hard kill play. And now use his full damage and itemization to instantly kill Nidalee, MF, or even LeBlanc. The Nidalee can Zonia though if you flash combos onto her, but it depends on her reaction time and on the angle. So far, to be honest, this game hasn't really been too exciting because of the earlier Kled hard engages because he knows they don't have the full team there. So he's trying to be optimistic and brute forcing to deny the Baron buff. It ends up being a really bad play, and it allows Dopa to go in. However, the GP is gonna pick him off in trade for the ADC. The Lee Sin is chasing the Nidalee, but he's gonna be 1v2'd because it's too far off his team. Nidalee trades her life for the Lee Sin. Fresh manages to hook the LeBlanc. In the meantime of the team fight that Kled desperately fought to set up for them, Trundle manages to split and take the bottom inhib. He shouldn't be wave clearing the bottom one. Instead he should either willingly sacrifice himself while trying to get the mid wave or they might get mid off the on the off chance of yeah actually they do because of Trundle being retarded and baiting them without realizing it himself, but it just ended up being the situation and outcome where he overstays and they overcommits and bot lane and Dopa's bot lane actually sees the overcommit so they go for the mid lane and then they win the 2v2 because they're stronger and pretty much Miss Fortune is actually really fucking bad and she gets caught in the 2v2 and doesn't end up doing much. Plus she burned the ult on Trundle, which the bot lane should have noticed while walking down and not attacking the turret down. This should conclude the game, and by the looks of it, it will. GP gets down as well. Okay, so this game was dictated early on by Nidalee being caught and died a lot. It's set up to manipulate the mid wave, as I assumed, because Lee would spend a lot of time mid, which helped Dopa and denied him a bit, because it ended up being a farm lane where both mid laners shoved back and forth to manipulate the wave to shove towards them, but both of them managed to clear them off relatively easy and didn't end up risking or dying anything. The only thing that really happened in mid was LeBlanc all-inning Dopa once, which was really good for her, but she could have chained, I believe, with her ult instead of doing the double Q, which allowed one more auto and could have perhaps killed the Dopa instead of him being on 8 HP. I don't think the solo kill would have led too much. It would have just put more gold pocket into the LeBlanc, because by the looks of it, the enemy team played really aggressive with the Cloud ult, trying to find an opening on the team and capitalizing an aggressive counter measurement to come back into the game. And Dopa just played really well and safe in every team fight, where he played around from behind on his teammates, except the last one in top, where he ulted for the misfortune of the Kled hard engaged and it didn't work out for them, and they got picked off by the GP. In the meantime, it concluded the game because Trundle split, then he overextended, and without realization, it helped Dopa's bot lane, who saw the intent or the oblivious play of Trundle, which led to then mid inhib and then them just closing out the game here. However, if I want to mention an honorable mention, it was the LeBlanc trying to kill the Kalista so they would not get Baron. The only really bad play from Dopa from Dopa's team, not necessarily himself, was the Baron where they traded 4 for 2, but it didn't end up for much because there were no minion wave to get other objectives, and the play still amounted in a surplus gold for his team. But that was the only way they gave an in back to the enemy team, except I think 1 or 2 team fights around the dragon, which was questionable, and the enemy team played well to capitalize or try to aggressively come back into the game through multiple team fights. And that should have concluded the entire game. The honorable mention is to the LeBlanc trying to kill the Kalista off to prevent the Lost Baron from happening. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed some insights on Dopa's TF, even though there wasn't really much to take into account from watching him lane this time around or in team fights, because it was pretty standard, the manipulation on CSing, and there wasn't really much action going on or positioning from his side that could be insightful or taken from. But I hope you enjoyed the gameplay of him and me mentioning perhaps a few points on how he plays. Thank you guys for watching, and if you want to see me play live, you can always catch me on Twitch TV, TF Only US, or you can just wait for me to upload more videos in the future where I lay my analytical and observation skills on Dopa's mid and try to see what he does differently or similar to me. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.